CEO perspective, we've heard the HR perspective, and we've heard the CFO perspective.
Heidi, thank you.
We are now going to have a session where we are going to hear from one of India's best marketers what the digital world is doing to marketing and what their expectations are of a CFO. We are going to talk to that's Jesse Paul. Then we are going to talk to Jaspreet Bindra, who's the Chief Digital Officer of Mahindra and Mahindra. He's going to talk to us about what is this new designation? You know, people are now getting hired and they are called the Chief Digital Officer. Do they really do anything? As a CFO, what should you be thinking about their compensation and their roles? And does it have implications for the way you are expected to behave? And then we've got Vijay Mehra, who's been a CIO and he's also a business person. He's VP Digital for McKinsey out of Singapore. And he's going to talk about given that the backbone of a lot of the digital world is technology, how do you need to be thinking about technology from a business perspective, as we move into this, as we go further with the transition into the digital world? So the way we're going to do this is we are starting with Jessie, who's here, and she will talk to us. We've got Jaspreet and Vijay both on the video link. And once Jessie finishes, we'll go through with the other two, and then we'll do a common Q&A right after. So please join me in welcoming our three speakers.
In 5 organizations, and generally I met them around budgeting time, and that was it. I liked one, and I'll leave you to guess which company that was. We'll come to that later. If you could get my deck up. So, quick question. We don't need all that following around. There are other things we could have done with that time. How many of you have Pokemon Go? I see some hands in the back, 3, 4. So, have you been catching any Pokemons around here? Got any? 2, 3, yeah? Good exercise? Yes? Now, what were you catching exactly? Any answers? What did you actually catch? Would 0 be the right answer? Nothing? You basically caught a picture, right? Did you pay for it? Nope. So it's free and you caught nothing. But you had a great time doing it. So I'm going to come to that. And so I got these lovely pictures. They were done in 1899. So there was this contest where they asked people to draw about what they thought the future was going to look like. And it's a bit small out there, but essentially it shows how you could kind of automate and build a house, how you could grow your food pretty automatically. Publishing, it shows all the books being fed into a machine and being wired into people's brains. It does look a lot like a Vedantu or a Baiju's class, actually. And you have travel, they're just flying around in a balloon. And healthcare, and then clothing, where again it's automatically produced for you. Now, we're not really, of things is trending towards 0. So when you were kids, you were probably told that you're going to get clothes for the school year. And how many of you went to Bata? Stuff some paper in and that's it. Or wear 2 socks, but you're not getting another pair of shoes. Now, this wasn't because your parents were trying to stop you from having the sense of entitlement that the millennials or the liberalization kids, as I would say, have. It was genuinely that the shoe was expensive, both in absolute terms and in relative terms. Most of us had probably 3 uniforms as well. Really lucky ones, rich ones amongst you had 5. But that was it again. I mean, if it got spoiled, that's it. Wait for the next year. So we actually also had a generation where most people bought a house at retirement because it was really expensive. And so that was, again, a life goal. I don't remember actually ever having gone on a holiday as a child. Very expensive. If someone went abroad, again, it was a huge milestone. Oh, my God, they can afford a ticket. So all of the things that we're talking about now, however, in both real and relative terms, are dropping to 0. Even things like energy, if you actually pull off solar energy, it's dropping to 0. So the nice thing is that you're going to get a lot of stuff almost for free. But that is very interesting from a finance point of view, because then where's the money coming from? So what does it do to the 4 Ps? Now, I have to confess that I managed to do an MBA without doing a single optional course in finance. So how many of you managed to do your MBAs without doing a single course in marketing? Most of you? Yep, there you go. Proud of yourself. Um, so the 4 Ps is Philip Kotler's little framework, and it's useful to follow. But if you look at it, the first P is the product, and most of you have, probably got great ideas on the product. But the product is usually kind of trending towards becoming a service, and now towards an experience. So earlier you would have bought a Nintendo game machine. Then, it was a question of playing with your friends. Now it's become this total virtual experience. There's no money being spent, and you're not actually getting anything, but you still love the time that you're spending on it. If you look at the second one, it's price. It's again trending to zero. Or maybe you're paying in effort, or maybe you're paying in data. So Facebook isn't taking money from you, it's just extracting your data. Yesterday I was trying to get an Uber cab, and it kept showing one right near my office, and he wasn't responding, and I'm like, I'm not getting a cab, I'm not getting a cab. And my finance guy's like, that might be my car. I'm like, what? You're an Uber driver? He's like, no, there's something called Uber Commute, which I've switched on because I can then pick up people on my way home, and I don't get money for driving, but I get reimbursed for the petrol. So he makes around $50 a day as reimbursement for his petrol by dropping someone up to MG Road or something like that. So he's getting paid in effort. It's a barter agreement. But essentially, Uber has got someone to work for them for practically nothing. Place, we've all talked about it, is anywhere, is digital delivery. And story is a product. And everyone is a publisher. So we talked a little bit about that earlier today when, if Vivek Debroy says bad things about you, it impacts your positioning. Does it? We'll come to that. So the experience economy, I know I was supposed to talk about the digital economy, but I think we've moved beyond that. Honestly, I think that we moved from digital to AR because Pokemon has shown that you can actually be successful with it. Everybody's just going to come, right? Now, so before we go to Chief Digital Officer, I would question who is the Chief Customer Experience Officer. Is the CEO the Customer Experience Officer? Because often you find that nobody is in charge of the customer experience. How many of you are on Twitter? Great. How many of you have complained on Twitter? Yep, a few. How many of you felt that the answer you got was so brain dead? Yes, a few. That the answer that you got when you complained on Twitter was very brain dead. It's like, yes, we have noted your problem and we will come back to you. And it's regardless of whether you say that, there's a fire next door or, the plane had a thing jutting out of it, the answer will be pretty much the same. That's because the guy who's been put in charge of the response isn't in charge of the customer experience, nor does he actually know where to go, right? The experience owner is at the top of the value chain. So everybody wants to own the experience. Unfortunately, that also means you own the risk. So the first picture I have, any ideas what that is? It's a very kind of tragic story. So there's a travel operator that I won't name, but it's one among, I think, the 2 biggest in the world. And they were used to book this little holiday home in Greece some 10 years ago. Unfortunately, there was a gas leak and the kids in the family died. The family sued, obviously, the travel company. The travel company said, but I just helped you find that house. I didn't actually own that house. Now, finally they sorted it out, but it was a very, very bad PR disaster for that holiday firm because it's a question of who owns experience, and then it becomes a question of who owns the liability when things go wrong. In India, we have seen similar things with the cab aggregators. It's great when things are good, but when things go wrong, people blame you, even though you actually had no control over the quality of the service or the liability thereof. And that's something that's going to be even bigger and bigger as we move into this partnership economy. Who owns the liability? Who's taking the risk? Your marketing guys are, most probably out there doing these wonderful partnerships. I don't think they've actually read the contract. Six Sigma, again, people like that in a day. So if you have like 10 million transactions, that's 34 errors a day, all being blasted out on social media. That's, again, not acceptable anymore. So Six Sigma is actually great for an economy where people were doing 1 million transactions a year, not an economy where everyone's doing 1 million transactions a day. So, if you take Flipkart, they get such a lot of flack for the occasional phone that is misdelivered. It's probably 1 out of 1 million, but that's the one that everyone likes to talk about. So you have to worry about liability in this new world where you have vast numbers of transactions, and the average person isn't complaining to 9 people, but if you're somebody like me, you're complaining to 34,000 just on Twitter. The price is zero. So this is a good finance problem. If the price is tending to zero, how are you going to get your organization to this price point? Because if you look at industry after industry, it's getting disrupted with the same philosophy. I don't want to own hotels, but I can run a hotel chain. I don't want to own cars, but I own transportation. I don't actually own any clothes, but I sell fashion, right? And for the customer, increasingly, the price is tending towards zero. So what are you going to do? And what investments are you making to enable this transition? Now, I've actually sat through sessions with CEOs, chairmen, 10 years ago when the companies wanted to invest in cloud infrastructure. Mostly it did not go through. Very few Indian firms actually did make a huge investment in cloud, primarily because it was just so hard to quantify the benefits. And it was just so out there, right? What do you want? It was not exactly a server, it's a cloud. So what do you want to buy? I don't exactly know, but you're going to have these things sitting out there which someone can access. But I need like $100 million and I don't know when the payoff is going to be. But when those who did not do it are now in trouble because they don't actually have a cloud solution, they don't actually have an offering, and that phase is moved beyond. And that's because, by and large, we're very cautious about investing in, the next cloud or the next Pokemon or anything, because there's nothing that I can promise you in returns. It's just an idea, it's just a trend. The third one, which is something for CFOs in today's economy to consider, is a lot of people are in artificial zero pricing. Any guesses on which kind of companies are there? The products are not actually zero, but they are being sold almost at zero, with 80% discount sales. It's in today's Times of India, if you've seen today's paper. There's a Friendship Day sale. It's like, how desperate are we? We don't even have Independence Day sale. We can't wait till August 15th. We've got to have Friendship Day today because 10 days without a sale, oh my God, what's going to happen to us, right? Also on the back of that paper was an ad in pure Kannada. I don't know why, in Times of India. Not Kannada, sorry, Telugu today. I don't know why. Who are they advertising to in Times of India? English in Telugu. But it's also a great offer. It's pretty much free and so on. Now, if you're, let's say, and Aditya Birla is the sponsor here. If you're an abof.com, how do you take on a company that doesn't want to make profits? Because the world is full of them now. There are companies with a very, very long view on profitability, and if you're in that line of business and your marketing guy comes and says, I just can't compete with free, what are you going to do? And I want to leave that thought with you because I don't have a solution for it, but it's like if your competitor is giving it away for free, you don't have a chance. As a consultant, I am having conversations with chairmen who say that, look, I've got this big aggregator who's eating my market on the other side, and then I have these huge global chains who are coming into India and don't want to profit on the other side. What exactly can I do? And the answer actually is either you join them or you sell, because in the short term, if things are going for free, you can't charge even $1,000 for it. Guys like the hotels, you know what's happening. Guys in transportation, the old-fashioned cab company, either you fight back or you sell, right? The path to the new economy is scalability, and a few companies have shown how it can be done. Make My Trip was amongst the first when it did its IPO, is that you first have to go for mind share, and mind share is very expensive because for all the talk of digital, we're still advertising in Times of India, full page ads, not less than 40 lakhs anywhere, right? So you want the mind share, and then you say, I need to grow market share, and the market pricing is trending to zero, so I'm funding all of that. Once I have market share, I can hope to get a profit share. So are you kind of funded? Are you willing to take the appetite of saying, I'm a new economy, scalable enterprise, and go down this path? And bear in mind that even if you don't want to do it, someone else is out there doing it. The examples I've put up are actually Flipkart. And then trust me, I'm almost a doctor. It actually is. I mean, you can go online and get a lot of medical advice for free. Trust it, don't, that's up to you. There are a lot of so-called delivery outfits which give you 25 to 30% discount on medicines. It's almost free. I don't see why you'd go to a normal medical shop after that. And then, of course, there's Khan Academy. So my kid goes to a very expensive, nice school, of course. But when it comes to maths and you see her report card, where are we? We're on Khan Academy, right? Um, So, and suddenly you're like, hang on, this seems to be working pretty well. I mean, maybe if there was a model like this for everything, we could save a lot of money and not do the other fancy school. And she could, have social interaction when she goes to swimming classes or something, right? Save a lot of money and effort. Because then you also wonder, you hear these horror stories about these millennials, and it's like, what's she going to do with education anyway? Let's just get her started with programming for free on Khan Academy. The place is anywhere, so this many other speakers have also talked about. But I was actually coached to talk a bit more about risk and how do you control the brand when you sell everywhere and it's almost all outsourced or through partners? Do we actually have standards for ingredients, the ethics of it? Now, whenever we work with an MNC, there's this huge document that comes saying that, no bribery, no this, no that. The recent contract I read actually said that you will not do business with any country which the US has sanctions with. Now, this is a huge company, so I signed, but then back of my mind is like, what if the US has sanctions and India doesn't? What am I supposed to do? Do I not do business with that country? I mean, where does how does it work? But they've got tons of people working with them in India, and I'm sure they've all signed this contract, but they're very clear in their mind. I have not seen a single Indian firm that's made me sign a contract saying that if India has sanctions against anybody, I won't do business with them, right? We don't have it. We're like, oh, whatever, yeah, rooted through Iraq, right? Good values are determined by culture. So this is something I keep saying. Because people preach a lot about good values at the corporate level, and then you find that they go into countries where those values are actually illegal. Forget values and thought, it's actually illegal. Indian companies are going global, and you have to ask yourself, which values are you adopting, right? If your global workforce says that LGBT rights are important to them, what's your stand? What are you going to do about the Indian legal position? I put up the ad of Visa. Visa operates in India. What does it do in India? It's a good question to ask, right? When your global stand conflicts with a local stand, which one wins? How do you address it? By and large, most Indian firms don't have guidelines to address these questions, but it is starting to become very important. Recently did a workshop, and I'll come to the next slide on that. What does country of origin mean to your brand? So we're very proud of being Indian or American or whichever of our country of origin, but what does it mean? So we were in Stockholm in this old-fashioned little hotel, and we're Indian, we like Indians, and we were all set for this, yeah, Indians good at technology and stuff. Oh, you go home when your visa expires, good people. And you're like, is that all the Indian brand means to you? We go home when the visa expires? But then it's like, in your mind, you're like tech, check, whatever. And in their mind, it's like, oh God, okay, at least they go home. But then if I'm selling an Indian product and proudly saying I'm Indian, is that of value? Should I just, not say anything? Maybe I'd be better off. Most firms have not actually got a policy on this either. Positioning, do you own it? So again, coming to the policy bit, how many of you know whether your companies pay for editorial? How many of you can say you know that you do or you don't? I see 3 hands, 2, 5, 6. It could get you into big trouble. I recently did a workshop for a company where they got into one story expose, whatever, saying that they had paid for tweets, they had done this, they had done that. And the CEO did not know that they were doing this because it doesn't actually look very visible that they are. It's true that a lot of people do it, and in India it's legal and there are no guidelines for it. But if you're a global company and you have global guidelines, which one applies here? So I put up the homepage of economictimes.com, and all the purple ones are the paid bits. As a typical reader, you don't actually even know that those are paid bits. Though they have clearly indicated that these sections are, most people don't know that it is. And the last one
Is it okay for me to go like this?
do you
Or
actually
you're
have
gonna go in
answers
shorts
to the
too?
who am I, why?
Okay, could you bring up my bag? That'll really help. Just tell me what you need.
Okay.
I need the stroller bag.
The
That's all
last
I
one
need, and I'll
is the
get
key
ready
risks
here.
in marketing.
And I'll just
I'm just going
then
to
I'll
leave
be
you
able to
with
go.
this one. You have tech risk, data
No,
risk,
my stroller bag.
and
I've got my.
I know from experience, we did a research, 15% are only 15% said they spoke to the CIO before tech investments. Most of them don't have a data privacy policy for customer data. So, it's worth considering. So.
We'll keep the questions for later. I think it's a fascinating insight into what's going on. Are we going with Jaspreet first or Vijay? Jaspreet? Okay. So Jaspreet Bindra is the Chief Digital Officer at Mahindra & Mahindra. He's going to talk to us about what his role means and then again implications for the CFO. Please join me in welcoming Jaspreet.
For many, many years, but a personal medical situation in the family held me back. I apologize for that. What we'll do is to try and spend the next 15 minutes, and I'm just going to share a presentation. We'll walk through that. Usually, I like my talk to be very interactive, uh, and we'll try and make that as much as possible given the circumstances. Let me just try and share my screen. Give me a moment. Here we go. Can you see the screen now? No? Okay. I guess it will take a little bit of time. Now? Okay, fantastic. So, I guess the transition of screens might talk about this new animal called the CDO. And it is sometimes difficult to talk about the CDO without talking about digital transformation because that's what a CDO does. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about what is digital transformation, a little bit about then the CDO, and then how does the CFO come into the mix in all of these. Um, One of the things that I would like you to do is actually use your mobile phones. Most of the times in these conferences, people say that you kind of have to hide your phones away. I would still like you to keep them on silent. But if you want to, want to use them for social media, for Twitter, for anything you want to tweet about stuff that you're hearing, I would welcome you to do that. I can hardly speak about digital transformation while telling you to keep your digital devices away. Uh, Going further, just on the digital transformation bit, there are many companies that we hear of today which dominate our mind space. Companies like Facebook, companies like Google, companies like Amazon, and a bunch of others, even homegrown companies, which which are what we call born digital. Those are companies which do not need any digital transformation. When they were born as a digital company. There are a few of them, and but they tend to dominate our media, our press, our mind space, and most importantly for the audience out there, our stock markets. The valuations that these companies have is amazing, and they're like literally like if you look at the economy, they're literally like the famous Wall Street 1%. 1 or 2% of these bunch of companies which are born digital tend to dominate the markets, dominate technology and the stuff that is happening, and we think that they are going to define our future. There are these other 99%, big pharma, big auto, big oil, hospitality, some of the companies that Jesse talked about in our earlier talk, which are what I call the become digital. These are companies which are quote unquote legacy, but all of them have this one desire, which is that how can we move from our legacy business models to become like these 1% companies, and therefore become these 99% moving to these 1%. And this whole thing of legacy business models moving to these new digital business models is really what is digital transformation. Uh, a McKinsey study or a KPMG study recently actually revealed that digitization or digital transformation is a top priority for these 99%. And it's driven by many factors. Obviously, besides the media hype and the PR, it's driven a whole lot by valuations. It's driven by the fact that these companies seem to be much more productive. It is driven by the fact that our consumers are becoming digital, and therefore, how do I become a digital company? And it's also driven by the fact that every 5 or 7 years, whole industries or whole sectors disappear or they get disrupted. Jesse gave some examples in our earlier talk, but we saw music, photography, video rentals, etc., getting disrupted about 10, 15 years back, 20 years back. A few years back, we saw television getting disrupted, news, travel, recruitment. We don't go through travel agents anymore. A lot of our news across the world tends to come through mediums which are different from what they used to be. Newspapers everywhere except in India are dying. And then as we go further, we have seen the hospitality industry getting disrupted. We have seen the personal transportation or mobility industry getting disrupted. And as we go forward, more and more of them are going to get disrupted. And this again kind of impels CEOs and others in the C-suite to look at how we can actually, before we get disrupted, how do we transform? There's a Gartner study again which predicts that, forget 2017, give it plus or minus 4 or 5 years, but basically a fifth of all market leaders will lose their number one position to a company founded after 2000 or in this century, essentially because of a lack of digital business advantage. But what does this digital transformation mean? To many of us, sitting around, the flavor of the day is that digital transformation means, okay, it used to be let's build a website. Now it is let's build an app. And if we have made an app, we think that it will solve all our problems. And that really is digital transformation. Well, unfortunately, it is not. Without going too much into detail, a digital transformation really impacts every single part of our organization. It usually starts with customer experience because our customers have moved to the cyber world or have moved online and lived a parallel life there. The businesses also need to move and offer a great experience seamlessly offline and online. But and this can happen through websites, this happens through apps, etc., etc. But as we do that, many times businesses also need to realize that they need to invest in and create digital products. The moment they create digital products, e-commerce, for example, in some sense, they realize that their processes need to change. And, therefore, the digital transformation or digitization impacts processes. If you're on Twitter, as against having a call center, for example, in a call center or in an email center, if a customer had a problem, he or she would write to the business, and the business would be fine to say that we'll come back to you within 3 working days. If the person tweets, you have to come back within 3 working minutes. And that really means that it's the back-end processes of the company, the response processes need to change. But more than experience, products, processes, it really is about two things. It's about digital business models. The Airbnb model versus the traditional hotel model, the Uber or Lyft model versus the traditional taxi model, for example. And business models are getting disrupted. And then eventually, finally, everything boils down to people, their people, culture, getting things done, tolerating failure, breaking things, moving on. And so there's a whole lot of transformation which needs to be done in culture. I'm not going to go through these, but I usually talk about these 10 rules of digital transformation, and many of them are applicable to you in the audience. It's about leadership commitment. You don't do a digital transformation unless hardcore business and financial metrics actually get impacted. You have to think the customer journey. Most of our organizations are built vertically, while a customer moves horizontally across our organization. And so, the whole the whole way that we need to think about the customer changes. The front end and the back end must talk from a technology viewpoint. The product development philosophy needs to change to make something called a product market fit. Uh, Digital and digital transformation is everything is about partnership. There are business models which need to be seen, and there's this whole platform business model coming in. Airbnb is a platform, for example. The marketplaces are platforms, and they change the rules of the game, and they change the way even we look at numbers, we look at accounting, we look at how business value is created. Uh, about enabling a cultural revolution. Above all, it's about people. And the thing that I want to leave you with in terms of digital transformation is that as and when a company starts this, it's usually a 5 to 7 to 10 year process by the time a company can be said to have moved from, say, a legacy business or a legacy business model to a digital business model. And many times, you know, uh, as this little cartoon says, this happens because the moment you move into digital, your business models change. And the way you look at money coming in, money going out changes. I want to just move to the next part of the presentation. And where I would have asked you who this gentleman is. Since I'm not there, tell you that this is a guy called Sri Srinivasan. He's probably the most famous chief digital officer of late. He used to be the CDO of the Met Museum in New York, and he was fired a few days back. And then, we all treat if someone is fired, we kind of get a little ashamed, we get a little humiliated. This guy went all out. This guy kind of just went into social media, talked about why he was fired, talked about the fact that, he was available, said that, he was available to have coffee, available to talk about new things. He talked about how it was getting fired. He was all over. And very recently, he's just been hired 3 or 4 days back as the chief digital officer of New York City. So, CDOs are going beyond businesses, and governments and cities and other such bodies are actually now looking at CDOs. A CDO is a new animal. It's a new role, and it's the latest C role actually coming into the C-suite. Uh, the role of the CDO, to put it very simply, is to is he or she
Oh, there's one on. Oh, that's not working.
is the owner of the digital transformation.
Oh shit! No, no, don't worry. No, 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 no. We took it out just because it was. It's more moody.
Sorry,
No, no,
I'm
don't
really
worry. No, no, Tim, please don't worry.
okay. I'm back. Uh, the CEO actually owns the digital transformation of a company end to end, and as he or she does so, uh, sorry, multiple. Sorry, I think the audio is gone. Okay. Anyway,
Thank you
I'm going
so
to
much.
continue. There are
Sorry to be
multiple.
interrupted. You must say to Heidi, this is the worst guest you ever hired. Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. I was having some interruptions. The role of the CTO at the very simplest is actually to oversee and own digital transformation in a company. But then that has various components, and some of the components are listed here. I've borrowed it from a DQ study, and creating digital user experience, recruiting great digital talent, looking at channels which go beyond your traditional channels, and therefore looking at how the business can become omni-channel, a lot of evangelization, obviously digital marketing strategy, but a bunch of things all digital is really the CDO's key role. And the way the CDO uh, appointments are kind of exponentially increasing. This is about the US. This is the last 10 years or so in the US. And as you can see, over the last 2 or 3 or 4 years, companies having CDOs, there are many more than there were. Even in India, I come across CDOs across. I thought when I came into the Mahindra Group, in this equivalent position that I was kind of one of the first ones until I realized that the Tata Group, for example, has mandated that every company in the group should have a CDO. Just day before yesterday, I met the CDO of Whirlpool India. 10 days back, I met the CDO of Max Life Insurance. And so, they're kind of happening now all across in different legacy companies. And what that is doing is multiple things. In many ways, the CIO role is getting disaggregated. Large parts of the CIO role have gone to the CFO. Some parts have moved to the CMO. Jesse talked about chief customer officer or chief customer experience officer, and that's also something which is a new role, and parts of what the CIO role would enable has become a part of the chief customer officer. And then there is the CDO role, looking at digital strategy, business models, etc. Even in the Mahindra Group or elsewhere, whenever we try and digitize, it becomes extremely difficult to figure out that who in the C-suite owns this digital transformation. Is it the CMO? Is it the CIO? Is it the CEO? Obviously, it's the CEO, but who within the CEO's organization? And that's where the CDO actually comes in, owning this end to end. The last part really is about, how does it impact, or, where does the CFO come in? And look, there are two things that over my 20, 21 years, I have learned about CFOs. One is obviously that you never mess with a CFO. But besides that, uh, the CFO today goes beyond just the F part or the financial part. And the CFO is becoming more and more strategic, and is not only about how much money the business is making or losing, but owns the business and owns the growth of the business as much owns management and policy and culture of the business. And so the same things that impact the CEO from a digital viewpoint, frankly, impact the CFO. Uh, there are these 8 things which I like to talk about, which, from our viewpoint, the Mahindra viewpoint, and, some of the other industrial company viewpoints, are actually impacting our business. And usually, when I am again live, I try and do a little pop quiz here. But since I'm not live, it's about mobility. This B, and I'm going to talk about it in the next slide. My last slide, really the blockchain. This is about the Internet of Things. This is really augmented reality or virtual reality, artificial intelligence and bots, platforms is a massive, totally different business model and topic which are impacting organizations. Personalization, and actually personalization without people, and then this whole concept of driverless stuff. And these are the big 8 digital disruptors, in a sense, which we believe are impacting our businesses and impacting business management, the CEO, the CFO, and everyone else. And perhaps you might know a little bit more about it, but it's a fundamental technology and as fundamental as the internet, and is fundamentally disrupting, will fundamentally disrupt how we do business. And even today, in multiple companies, it has given rise to something called triple entry accounting rather than double entry accounting, as companies move from their current ledgers to the universal ledger of blockchain. Maybe, if any of you is interested, you can send me a tweet or an email. You'll have my coordinates at the end. But this is something I'm passionate about, and looking at bringing it into India. And a bunch of things are going to happen around the blockchain from the Mahindra Group and from me personally as we go forward. I don't need to talk about mobility and how it's changing everything from a CFO perspective, just in terms of dashboards, reports, in terms of just the way the customer is looking at things. But beyond that, there's things like big data analytics. There's a recent study which said that 87% of CFOs want to use big data analytics for decision making, and that is the cloud is another big thing, which is impacting the CFO's life. And then finally, there's social media. I am not talking about each one of these because that'll take a lot of time. Some of these probably we can think about in questions and answers. But off the lot, if I was to focus in one, I would focus on the big D at the left-hand side, which for this audience is probably the biggest one, which would impact. Um, Finally, sorry for that uh, little thing in the middle. But finally, at the end of it, the CFOs must also realize that this is what our workforce would look like as we go forward. The expectations that the workforce has on the organization, on the CHRO, the CMO, the CEO, and the CFO, and all the financial policies and the way they work is probably going to be the biggest impact from a digital or a digitalization viewpoint for the CFO. Now, as I end my talk, and happy to hand over to Mr. Mehra and then questions, I usually put this forward as we can be very serious and get into everything from a digital viewpoint and how it's going to impact us, or we can just use jargon. And sometimes using jargon also helps. And this is the best jargon Dilbert pattern that I could ever think of. If you guys see it that way. Finally, this is where you can get me, my various digital coordinates. And I'm sorry again that I'm not there, but happy to take questions and also take tweets and mails, etc. going forward. Thank you very much.
I think as we go into the Q&A, one of the things that I would like to ask him is what are his challenges with the CFO, right? I mean, he's talked about how you can't mess with them, but I think that's one of the pieces that we will go back to. I'd like to go right to Vijay Mehra in Singapore. Can you get him on the... Is he connected?
Yeah, hi, Anu. That's the Skype account connecting. Okay.
Can you see
Great.
the room now?
I can see the room and I can see Jaspreet. I think they're just connecting the the video on the Skype.
Yeah, okay, that's great. Vijay, we've had a bunch of people talk about what digitization means for the business and what it means in terms of the processes or the kind of changes that are required. So if I can request you, rather than spend any time on that, to just go straight into one, the technology backbone that is required for a company to go transform into a digital one, and then expectations or some of the questions that CFOs should ask as their companies go digital.
Sure, will do. And apologies to the audience and Anuradha and Jaspreet, you may have had some interruptions. I'm actually in a remote part of Indonesia on a brief vacation, so there's a bit of wildlife around and a few, background noises of a waterfall, etc. So apologies for that up front. So this is a great question that you've asked, Anuradha, and frankly, the audience, and I picked this up from Jaspreet's talk as well, the audience faces a particular challenge because when you're a CFO in an enterprise and you're seeing all this digital disruption happen all around you, it's sometimes difficult to fathom, A, what is the scale of change, B, how quickly is it going to affect us, whether I'm a bank or a telco or a CPG company or a industrial products manufacturer, and D, so if these are the digital disruptions and patterns that are happening, what do I make of it as a CFO? So I thought I'd paint a little bit of a picture and make it a little bit industry specific, and then dive into the technology angle, as you've mentioned, Anuradha, about what's really happening and what is the state of readiness that is needed from a technology angle for the enterprise, not for the startup, for the enterprise, to battle with the startups that are causing all this disruption. And then put a little bit of a flavor on, what's really happening with banks as we see it in Southeast Asia, what's happening with telcos, where we think the push will come from for IoT and big data and analytics for manufacturing and supply chain, and then end the talk at that point. And I'd really like to make this a conversation. So if we can have a dialogue, and I know it's a bit difficult on the phone, but that would be really, really super. So let me start with a question. How many of you are from the financial services, or as we say in India, BFSI industry? Please raise your hands. Okay, I didn't see any. How many from telcos? Okay, is it all a manufacturing crowd? Hello?
I know that there's one media, there's pharma, there's medical devices. Can you, Vartika, can you just take the mic around and get people to respond?
Okay, so I couldn't hear that very clearly. Anuradha, what's the mix of the audience roughly? It's pharma, it's
Can people just respond from their table so that it's easier for Vijay to get a response?
pharma, IT, and
From this table, it's a manufacturing. I think.
okay, very good, excellent. Thank you, thank you. Great.
Health tech.
So
Manufacturing.
great, great, super. So you see, the common thread with all these industries, media, pharma, healthcare, IT, etc., is the consumer. And you heard from Jasprit and from the first speaker also about the consumer journey and the consumer experience. So what's really the challenge here is that as you sit within the enterprise, your consumer in a B2C context has gone digital. And what has happened is that as that consumer has gone digital, they expect all their products and services providers in their ecosystem to also go digital. And that's where the pressure comes from. Now, the advantage of a startup is that they don't have the legacy infrastructure issues, the legacy IT issues, the legacy process issues, and they're able to think on their feet and think through what are some of the game-changing disruptions that will make a difference in a given industry. So to combat that, one really has to look at from the enterprise technology and process capability what needs to change. And to understand the sort of battleground that one is in, whether in media, pharma, healthcare, or IT, one has to look at the technology backbone in three contexts. The first context is what's going on and what does one need to develop from an architecture point of view. And in the context of the architecture, there needs to be a separation of layers so that the front end, the channels, the digital front end, can innovate very, very quickly at the digital speed and yet be integrated to the enterprise, because the mass of data and information and wealth of knowledge that is within the enterprise on the consumer's buying patterns, that has to be leveraged as well.
Hello? Mr. Mehra?
Around technology. Is that okay? Can I have Jesse come back here and Jasprit? As opposed to comments from him. But I'd like to just open the floor to question and answers, mainly to Jesse and Jasprit. Marketing or around the role of the CDO?
Price kind of tending to zero for everything. Isn't it a side effect of really valuation?
There is a trend towards zero. So if you look in real terms, and I did do the research before I put that slide up, shoes actually do cost less. 100 years ago, shoes were hard to make, source, everything like that. So as soon as you got synthetic options, the price actually did drop. The price of, let's say, something like medical testing has also dropped because let's say that you use a Practo or you use a Potia, what they're using is excess capacity of someone else. Same thing with Uber, they were using excess capacity, right? So there are numerous forces at work. One is that food production, again, it's transportation, distribution today, that's your biggest cost. But again, if you do vertical farming or if you're able to, let's say, find electric vehicles which don't cost so much to transport, food price will also drop. So all your basic necessities, in real terms, the price is dropping. And where it hasn't dropped in real terms, yeah, you're right. VC funds come in and kind of step in for a while. But my question to you was that, so if there is a Flipkart which is heavily subsidizing apparel, and there is an abof.com which has brands to sell but doesn't want to sell them at subsidized prices, then what is a CFO supposed to do? How do you compete with an artificial zero price? It's interesting that there are no questions, but generally speaking, when you go in for a budget meeting, there are lots of questions. So,
so just one thought here. This is Leon. So just when we talk...
As a finance person, you will know that some of the companies you're talking about have not made profits in a decade. They're okay with it.
Right, because there are funds coming from a place
where...
Whatever,
I mean, I'm funded and, I've even done an IPO and I'm worth billions. I still haven't shown profits and no one has a problem. So sometimes, my husband and I are like, oh, which VC fund shall we use today? Should we order on Swiggy or should we order on... Because effectively they are funding the price of the food or the distribution. There's a very cool startup called Dunzo. I don't know if you've heard of it. They operate in Bangalore. They do anything you want them to do. So we've had them buy, UPS for our company. We've had them deliver stuff, and the maximum price for any task is 60 rupees.
Hello.
It's not viable, but it's great.
But finally, this is all against economics, and economics tells us that someday it will fall down. That's what the view I have.
A lot of people have been waiting a lot of time for some of these firms to fail. They've been around for 10 years. There's obviously a lot of money in the system.
Just one thing, if you feel that if they are really indeed making losses for many years, then to a certain extent it will be a restrictive trade practice. And there will be laws which will take care of them. Don't you think so? Because you just can't be selling, you can't be running a business at a loss for many years, and you are being restrictive.
The listed companies. You tell me how you're going to fight them. But current situation is that if you're a traditional business looking at traditional rules of finance and you're up against them, marketing is probably your only lever because that problem isn't going away. Or you try lobbying, which could possibly work as well.
And as he rightly pointed out, it's just that there is a lot of capital in the West which is not earning any money, and that is subsidizing or funding these products or services.
No. Not all of them. So I would say that Uber is a disruptive model in itself. Airbnb is a disruptive model in itself. It isn't necessarily that they're just, giving things away artificially for free. So there are two categories. There are those who are artificially free, and then there are those who genuinely have managed to drop costs. Yeah,
but sorry. I think, I do want to step in here and ask one question. In all of your companies here, can I just have a few responses to what is the average spend on marketing as a part of your overall?
And up. Okay.
Sorry, Jessie, just 1 second. Let's just get some responses and then we'll come to 25% and above. How many people below up to 10%? 10 to 20%? More than 100%? The guys who have no revenue and are still just spending, right? Sorry? 30. Can you tell us what is the average spend for a digital company? I mean, if I look at the marketing spends for, is Mekin here still? I think he's left.
They're definitely 100% plus.
Right? So the Flipkarts and the Amazons and the Snapdeals of the world, they are spending, before they have revenue, their entire money is actually spent on marketing. And I think that's the kind of question that I would hope people will ask in this room, that what is it moving toward? What is marketing spends trending towards as you move from traditional to digital?
Can I comment?
Jasprit, yes, I was going to just ask you, Jasprit, that have you seen it? Yeah.
So, this is having free, and you talk about what are the CEO challenge with the CEO. It actually all comes together as a part of this question. When Flipkart or Snapdeal or similar talks about marketing, actually the word they would be using is customer acquisition. Okay, so they are actually spending that money to acquire customers. And they are spending that money to acquire customers much before the, forget profitability, even in many ways, revenue has started flowing in. And you know, that's one of the things that is kind of becoming more and more true of quote unquote digital companies, that many times you've got to spend upfront on customer acquisition before the customer actually starts paying you, and you know, and hopefully and the lifetime value you get some money back. Now what happens is that funnily this is not very different from say a manufacturing firm. In a manufacturing firm, you first spend maybe 2,000 crores, 5,000 crores, 100 crores, whatever it is, setting up a plant. So you know, the money there also is spent upfront. But the CFO is very comfortable because the money is being spent on a physical asset. And you know, there's something you can see, and there are accounting treatments for that, and depreciation will happen, etc., etc. That is not going to happen if the same money is spent upfront in customer acquisition. And
Jasprit,
that's a big, sorry.
Jasprit, I have a CFO here very vehemently shaking his head and disagreeing. Can we just have a comment and then come back? We'll just come back. Just give me a second.
Okay, because okay, please, because you know I was going to qualify that, but anyway, let him have that.
Go ahead.
So, and in many ways, this free bit that Jesse was going to talk about is important, because you know, actually in the digital world or in the internet, nothing is free. If it is free, then you are the product. So if you think Facebook is free for you or Gmail is free for you, it's true, but then you become actually the product, and you know, you are being monetized. And actually all these quote unquote free companies are actually acquiring you by spending money, and then are going to monetize you. So the whole construct and the way of thinking sometimes becomes very, very different. I will stop here and you know, wait for the guy you said who has some vehement
Yes, please go
there's
ahead.
more to this.
Yeah.
You did give one example, but if you take a look at the e-commerce sites, which is where they are blowing up the money, today everybody talks about what is called as cost to investor over there. And when you talk about customer acquisition over there, if you take a half a dozen of these Flipkart, Snapdeal, Amazon and all, you can find a simple product, take an iPhone, particular model. On all these, people are comparing the sites and finding different prices for the same product. You simply go and pick up whichever is the cheaper and gives you the best service. So what happens? Yeah, there is an app, Smart Bricks, and you have several of them. What happens to customer acquisition? Because this customer is looking at the best deal and he will go and take it up.
Okay, so if I can...
Long-term sustenance.
So I just want to say one thing. Those companies are not what I would call ideal marketing guys. Do a Telugu ad, it makes no sense. But I've got it, I'm spending it. So that's not good marketing. It's, you know, someone's giving them the money.
I have another related question on...
Just speak into the mic, Sunil.
But when such things happen, and this is disruption which is happening.
I just want to add to that, because Jasprit can also jump in with Jesse, which is that one of the things that I had asked you to comment on was, how do you differentiate between the hype and the reality of being able to respond to what digital businesses, the born digital businesses, what they are doing to the market, even as you try and transition? How do you cope with that onslaught? And the fact of the matter is that if you don't survive the short term, then what's the point in working towards sustainability, right? And yeah, go ahead.
Just summarize what he was talking, if you may.
Sorry, you want me to repeat the question, is it?
No, well, the gentleman in the audience was talking, it was extremely unclear. I could not get what he was talking. So is there a way that you can just summarize that?
The question was more for Jessie.
Okay,
as to how she is going to deal with the marketing aspects of these customer acquisition and other things.
So that's fine.
Okay, so let me answer H&M. They're not half as threatened by e-com as the others, because they've already done what they call fast fashion. So it's available for a week and then it's off. So if I keep changing it, price is not a factor for you. So one is that you have to remove price from the equation. It is the easiest crutch to sit on. But unless price is your sole differentiator and your entire ecosystem is built on price, what else has marketing delivered for you? And honestly, I would say the e-com companies, again, they're going just with price, except one player who I don't want to name, because we all know who it is, because people do want service. Price is nice, but only until the stuff is broken or I have a problem or it's a high impact something or the other. I also want to talk not just about e-com, which as we know is artificially funded, but what about somebody like a Practo, which is definitely not just the money being thrown, it is value add, it is different, and it is now disrupting even your pharmacy market. So you go to a doctor in Bangalore today, it is booked through Practo, the appointment is confirmed through Practo, and then as soon as the doctor prescribes something, you actually get a call saying, oh ma'am, the doctor's prescribed it and it's coming to your house in 30 minutes, you want to pay for it. And the stuff is at 30% discount over unbranded medicine in your local shop. What is the local shop going to do? What's his way to fight back? He's just a trader. So my own contention to you, sir, would be that most companies who see themselves as traders are going to get disintermediated by one of these guys. If you're a distributor and a trader, you are next in line.
But we are talking about manufacturing.
Passion to buy the brand. Now, unless it is, so basically it's reset to 1,000 rupee price and they've let it get reset. It's like what OA rooms did with the hotel rooms. Once I have bought the hotel room at 1,000 rupees, I am not going to go back to that same hotel and pay 2,500 because now in my mind, this is 1,000 rupee hotel, give it to me at 1,000 bucks. So once you have allowed price to corrupt your brand value, it is really hard for you now to say that I am a premium brand. I'm used to paying 1,000 bucks, why will I pay 1,500 now?
See, you gave a couple of examples of Practo and all. So these new startup culture and all has given a lot of opportunities for new services, which everybody finds useful, and in many cases like House Joy and all, people will even pay a premium price for it because these services were not available as a convenience.
Correct.
So digital has played a good role over it. But there are also a lot of these premium products. You gave an example of shoes. You get shoes for 200 rupees, same sports shoes and similar exact looking Adidas, Reebok will be 4,000 rupees. Now Adidas, Reebok, Nikes and all of them are available on the e-commerce sites. You pick up a same model. I'll give you exactly the same model.
Sunil, I think the question is
clear.
clear.
So we need to deal how we are
I think the question is clear. I think if there isn't an answer to it, then there isn't an answer to it. If there is someone in the audience who has a response.
I think one very significant change that has happened now is the regulation.
Can stop a trend only up to a point. I think the point he's making is that if businesses are getting funded in a certain manner and you are not funded in the same manner, then there is a huge disadvantage that the traditional business is going to be at. So the e-commerce piece and the regulation is a completely different response for a different reason. I don't think it's going to help you answer the question in the long term.
So if I can just add one thing, just on the shoes thing. Why? Because they have converted shoe buying from a chore to an experience. People are buying backpacks, people are buying tents. Who in India ever went camping? Right? So you can create an experience, and my answer to you on how to fight back, after 10 years we've gone to a Raymond store only because they have the bespoke option now. So again, they've made it an experience and they do some computer measurement and they do computer something. So I can fight back, but with an experience, not on price.
But also, Jessie, I think a more expensive option to counter something, am I right? That there are businesses that are struggling in any case to grow or survive or become more profitable. And this audience is concerned about the profitability of their business. So you can't actually pick everything and convert it into an experience, right? So, I mean, how much are you going to... Sorry?
Can I please interrupt on that question about the cost of doing business?
Sorry, yes, Jaspreet.
Absolutely right. That the funding sources for these quote-unquote digital startups is very different from the funding sources that established companies would have. The cost is, the cost of capital there is so much cheaper, and the cost of capital here is so much more expensive. How do we compete? Is absolutely right. But also the fact here is that is the issue. That is the problem. It isn't going to go away, and we have to live with it. Whenever a quote unquote legacy company wants to go digital, when GE wanted to invent the industrial internet, they faced the same issues. When Nike or Starbucks, they were the pioneers of this digital transformation bit. They took in the same problems. I, at the Mahindra Group, faced exactly the same issues. There are two responses that I can have to it. One is that I just say that, look, it's an unfair playing field, so there's nothing I'm going to do. I'm going to do the stuff that I was always doing. The other is that, look, there is always a way out and there are ways to adapt. For example, we have a tractor business, for example, and funding of tractor businesses or tractor plants or whatever is traditional. And if I want to grow in my tractor business, my cost of funding will be what it is for traditional businesses. Now, if I want to go and do some digital stuff in the tractor business, a new company where I can think of, and we've done something which is like an Uber for tractors. Now, if I want to do an Uber for tractors, either I can do it as a part of the company, as a function, or as a department of the company, and then face the same funding issues where my cost will be high and my cost of acquisition, or cost of capital will be high, cost of customer acquisition will be high. On the other hand, what we have done is structured this as a startup. The company gives some seed funding, takes it to a certain level. Then you go out like a startup with the way the whole startup structure, different business. You have to sacrifice certain things. We are saying that the Uber for tractors is not only for Mahindra tractors, it's for everyone. And it's brand agnostic. And it might cannibalize my own business. But I go out taking that incubated startup and raise money from the same sources of low cost that the startups raise from. So look, that's what it is. And you have to play by those rules and change your business models and the way you do things to follow them. You cannot wish that the cost of funding will become equal. It will not, because that's venture capital, and the money that you're raising is debt or internal accruals or the usual stuff. There are multiple other ways out. I'm just giving you an example of how we have tried to do it. One of the ways we have tried to do it in a legacy company atmosphere.
Right. I think, Rajiv, if it's...
No, one piece which is just want to, kind of Jaspreet, is the context that, as you clearly articulated, the core businesses, which are the brick and mortar models, will remain, because ultimately, at the end of the day, every customer is looking at the right product at the right service. All these other disruptive pieces which are coming into framework now, the digitization, are all additional business models, These are also to enable, and maybe these would enhance. I would not say that the core businesses would undergo a completely transformational change, because these are the variants of doing the same business. And ultimately, in terms of the overall marketing cost, the digitized costs may be somewhat varying. They cannot just, kind of wish away. Obviously, the hotels today, what is coming into play, somebody who doesn't have the business of constructing, but the core hotels are still there. The entire experience, the entire framework, how do you ascribe the right value for it is only going to enhance a differentiated model for different segments, different approaches to do it. The core way is not going to change. Otherwise, then there is no business.
We are going to close this session, but I think the point is, Rajiv, that your competition is going to come from completely non-traditional responses to your core business. So you mentioned hotels, but Airbnb has used technology to make many more places to stay available, right? So it has actually changed the core, because that option didn't exist for me till 3 years ago. Today that option exists and I can actually make a choice. Let's forget the business traveler. The person who was going for a holiday, Airbnb is a genuine option that has become available to me only because of what the digital economy is making possible. So the core is actually, I think for us to sit and say the core is not changing is just waiting to be hit. And I think that is really, it's like Uber today not seeing what a driverless car will do for it, because the core is actually changing. And I think we are in, this particular piece is actually probably the most turbulent piece within the business environment that we have to actually just remain aware of and cope the best we can. I don't know how many answers exist, but I do have to close this session. I'm glad we've created a fight in the room. And But thanks a lot, Jaspreet. Thanks, Jesse. I'm sorry we lost Vijay somewhere along the way. We're going to take a quick break for coffee and come back for the last couple of sessions to close the day today. Can I please ask you to join me in a big hand for Jesse and Jaspreet?
Thank you very much. Sorry